No moral ambiguity, all the ingenuity. Thoroughly directed at war in your community. No matter what they do to me, it won't change the fact. Freedom's a human right, it's time to take me back. So how do we stop this obnoxious nonsense? A meeting, a forum, a concert, a conference. I understand the need to talk and process, but we need action, not just thoughts and concepts.
Somebody help me.
That's word.
This is not healthy.
Man.
I am not wealthy.
What I do, have the power to break the chains.
Welcome to another episode of Right to Survive Television. I'm Lisa Fay. I'm hosting today. We're flipping the script where my interviewee, Ibrahim Mubarak, usually does the interviews.
Thank you for having me and doing this hard interview.
As a renowned activist for human rights, why or how did you decide to advocate for the houseless community?
I disappeared for 2 years and off the radar where nobody knew. None of my family, no friends, associates knew where I was. And so what I would do would put a city, a state, or country on a dartboard that was compatible to my education, my knowledge, my experience, and spin that dartboard and threw that dart, and wherever that dart landed on, that's where I went. In doing that, I would go to the shelters in that city, state, and flood the system with my resume, get a job and contract myself out for a year or so, and get an apartment and do the same thing. And in the last 90 days, I would leave that apartment and hit the streets and save my money up and do the same thing. And that's how I was traveling from different states and different cities. So, and staying in the house, in the shelters, I talked with the houseless people and beholden to my opinion on houselessness, that I thought everybody wanted to be inside. They was just in a bad situation. It's true, but they had limited resources to help them get back into housing. And if it wasn't for the type of education and knowledge I had, I wouldn't have been able to do it neither. And what reverence with me and stuck with me when I went to Somalia and found Shangani, a direct village of my descendants, that how they reverence one another, how they catered to one another, took care of one another, and nobody was homeless, nobody went hungry. If it was 5 of us and I had a jelly bean, we sliced it in 5 equal parts, so it wouldn't be no jealousy or animosity. In 1998, I was making like $17.75 an hour, and I quit that job to become houseless again, to experience what my friends, my brothers and sisters was going through. And they was right. I mean, the way they was being treated by the social service agencies and agents, and by the police, and by people, the common community, about the people who didn't understand or aware of what's going on in the streets or how people was living. I realized at that point that people wasn't standing up for their rights. People wasn't speaking up about the brutality and the cruel and rudeness of living on the streets, or how it was less humane to be on the streets, and how people was treating them.
Let's go back to the vision for a Field of Dreams, shopping cart parades, and the creation of what is now known as Dignity Village. How did you meet Ross Bennett, and who were the leaders of the Homeless Liberation Front that later became Dignity Village? And can you tell me also, as you talk about that, what it meant to the people to be part of that early movement?
The Homeless Liberation Front was a group of people mixed with mainly street root vendors and other advocacy that was tired of being treated in a bad way because of their social status and because the situation revolving around people being houseless. And in that movement, I don't think Jack was part of that, but I know Tim Brown and JP and a few others was part of it, along with Ross Bennett, the Homeless Liberation Front, where they was mainly our scouts, and they'd go out and look for parcel of land that wasn't utilized, and they'd say, hey, let's come camp out here, and that's what we was calling camping. And so with that, the Homeless Liberation Front was really the voices of the people at that time, where they'll do all the protests and do all the speaking out and the awareness on how people was being treated, where the other people will, make sure we come up with some type of governance system where we would help each other out different than a shelter, because the traditional shelter was made just for that, to give people shelter, not to help them get productive. You come in at a certain time, you go to sleep, they feed you, and then you wake up and go. But what do you do in the meantime? So how do you get productive with carrying all your luggage? And then where would you get a decent shower? Where would you wash your clothes? Where would you use the restroom is what was on. And where can you sleep comfortably without being separated from your partner or your pet? And these are things that we were starting to see. So the Homeless Liberation Front was really the first voice of the people. And then we got together and we said, well, we're going to start a camp and camp of dignity, where everybody have dignity and pride can come here and work together to get on our feet. And so we called it Camp Dignity. And in doing that, we found out there was a camping ban, that you couldn't just put a tent on some vacant, unused land. You couldn't just sleep on the sidewalk in the public, because they was criminalizing you for sleeping in public spaces.
Ibrahim, so how long have you been working for this to get this going here?
I've been working at the Dignity Village about 10 years. So I wanted another spot to go along with Dignity Village, and then after this we're going to get another. Hopefully we have the domino effect and the chain reaction that we need villages everywhere. Hey Dan, how's it going?
Well, these guys are busy in negotiations as we speak. And over here we have building negotiation going on. Right here, building T-structures.
Okay, we just do one more of these things.
Right.
He's taking pictures now. Mother is watching.
What was the original goal of Right to Dream 2?
The original goal of Right to Dream 2 came from the first, no, it wasn't the first direct action, could have been the second direct action of Right to Survive, where Leo Rose came to us and said the city allow people to pitch a tent on the sidewalk overnight and wait for the parade the next morning. And he said, this is strange that they allow people to do that. So he gave me the ordinance, and I read it and pondered on it and said, we need to do something about this. If the city can allow housed people to come on the streets for one night and pitch a tent and party and wait for the parade, why can't they let people do it for more than one night as a means of survival to get productive? And not meaning that they be on the main course of the sidewalk, but be on a partial of land somewhere out the way where they can have all of their values with them, where they can be with their mates or partners or their pets, and they can build solidarity within one another.
How do you think Right to Dream 2 has impacted the lives of the folks that have stayed there?
The impact that we had was that we was doing something that traditional shelters wasn't allowing, where you didn't, if you had a partner or you was a couple, don't matter if you're in the LGBT community, don't matter if what people call straight, I don't know, I don't like to get into semantics. If you had a partner, no matter what partner you had, that you was able to come in and sleep, give $1 so we can buy more tents, buy water and food and stuff to feed them. And you had a pet, you was able to bring your pet, but it had to be people friendly or other pet friendly, or you put a muzzle or put it in a kennel, and you was able to sleep. And at first it didn't do well because people was reluctant on coming, and because they thought there was gonna be swept, which is still happening. You sleep and you get comfortable and the police come and say you can't be there. But then when Right to Survive start advocating and speaking up and saying we ain't gonna move, people saw that we was being steadfast and helping them with their security on being stable where they can get productive again. So we start educating the houseless community on speaking up for themselves and speaking up for their rights. When people get together and stand up for their rights and they start getting productive, and they have the statistics to show the productivity of what they be doing, it take notice. Because for one thing, it was very inexpensive. To run a shelter, you had to pay for liability, you had to pay for the heating, the water, the electric, and the building space. But doing a tiny house village or a tent city or a rest area by any other name, it was very inexpensive. It was like anywhere from $1,200 to $2,200 a month to house 115 people or so, which per day on an average. And people was around peer, their own peer. People wasn't being mistreated or snobby or saying, I got this type of degree, I'm better than you, so you need to listen to me. I'm gonna micromanage you. You can't micromanage people. You can't even manage people. You had to manage the problem, the situation. We knew our rights. And the ones that didn't know their rights, we taught them their rights. And then to show us how people was getting off of drugs, how women was able to keep their babies, how people was going back to school, graduating from high school, graduating from college, how people was finding employment, how people was finding housing on their own in their community and govern themselves where no crime was being committed, and crime even went down in a vicinity where we was at. This took people by, oh, wow, houseless people can do this.
Do you see more cities across the country entertaining the idea of self-governed communities for houseless?
The things I'm starting to see now is cities and social service entity taking over our concept, trying to micromanage, which is going to fail because they're the same people that's been failing us before. They got to allow the houseless people, 55% on up, to have control of their own destiny. And they have to stop telling people what they think is best for them and start listening to the people. And those are two different concepts, or two different stigmas that's going to hurt this tiny house movement for houseless people. Is that the social service entity and the city officials and the powers to be need to let go and release and let back and give people that opportunity to become productive on their own, instead of going with the same concept that's been keeping people with their thumb and keeping people pressed down and now allowing them to rise up.
Let's talk a little bit about affordable versus obtainable housing. Why are cities slow to create more housing that's obtainable to lower income people than affordable for the median income?
Because they don't have common sense. They think the houseless community don't patronize America. And I'm gonna draw this out, and we can go back to that. When they say affordable housing, we're gonna build affordable housing. Who are they building affordable housing for? That person that make 30,000 plus, 60,000 plus? What about the people that make 10,000 plus on up, or the people who don't have that type of income, where you have a 2-income family that only job they can get, because jobs are scarce these days, they can't make that much money, or they do get a job and they got to realize the high rate of rent, or the high cost of food, of clothing, or the high cost of education. You got all these decisions that you have to make, and what do you do with that? So attainable housing is compatible to the income or social status level that I'm in, and I can attain housing. Affordable housing is anybody can afford this housing if you make this much money. They don't add that if you make this much money.
If we're not building obtainable housing, are shelters the solution?
Shelters is not the solution, because again, it separates and destroys and create trauma impact on people. If you and I was married and had little children, you had to go to the women's shelter. I had to go to the men's shelter. Where do the children go? They go to foster parents or foster care.
But don't shelters help families stay together? Aren't there enough family shelters?
It's not enough family shelters, and it depends on if you're referred by a caseworker to go to these shelters. And so the children go to foster care, which they pay that foster parent at least $1,200 a month to babysit your child while you roaming the streets looking for housing, looking for work to get housing. So why can't they give you that $1,200 a month, which keep your family together and put you in housing and have you a caseworker to help you climb back up that ladder, instead of creating trauma to you, your husband or your wife or your partner and your child. Shelters, again, are just meant to shelter you from, so you can get sleep and wake up and go back out in the streets to do whatever.
Do you think we need a shift in social consciousness with the way we deal with criminalizing and traumatizing of our houseless neighbors?
If we need a shift in consciousness, make everything attainable for people and quit targeting and profiling people that don't have what you have, that have when they would accomplish what you have. If a shift in consciousness, what we need to do is to stop belittling and treating people like they're inhumane.
So how would you shift the way people think?
So how you shift the way people think is that you create your own environment within the environment where people are creating communities once again and getting productive, where people are developing a mass mobilization to speak up for themselves and others, and talking to your city officials and going into the elected leaders that you voted for and letting them know this is not the proper way. This aspect on what you're doing, how you're treating people is not right. You start using your constitutional rights and standing on your constitutional right. It's not criminal to sleep. What crime are you committing while you sleep?
How are people resilient with Right to Survive as teams when they are in a campaign that has a setback or defeat?
The first thing is that you're a humanitarian. You're fighting for human rights. That's the first thing. Second thing, you're fighting for civil rights, equal rights. Then you're fighting for constitutional rights. If everything is not on that, or if you don't use those three as a foundation, you're going to lose, because those are the law of the land. I look at the LGBT, the gay rights. Mm-hmm. I look at the women rights. Mm-hmm. I look at the civil rights. Those are all things that was productive in this country that won their rights. And they still, and once you win your rights, you got to fight to keep your rights, and they still fighting for your rights.
So how do you cultivate the relationships that you've built over the years with the volunteers that make them want to stay with Right to Survive?
Yeah, I take them with me. I talk to them and say, hey, this can be you, your child, your brother, and then these people, the houseless community, are not here by choice, but they here by force.
Or circumstance.
Circumstance, yeah. Gentrification is creating more houseless people than ever been. They attacking the people of color. They're attacking the poor people. They're attacking people, our elders. You're seeing more gray-haired people out in the streets with nowhere to go. You're seeing more military veterans out in the streets with nowhere to go. You're seeing more runaways out in the street. So how do you cultivate that? You tell them to look at what's happened, and they struggling also with their lifestyle on how to stay productive. And so you combine that with people and open up their imagination, and open up their imagination and combine that knowledge and them seeing what's happening in the streets. They can't help but say, I was wrong. I thought these people was this way. Especially when they connect and they go out and talk with people and say, these people are real. They're sad, they're in a sad predicament, but they're real. And so they become themselves a humanitarian, because now they have compassion on them. Now they see the truth and not what the city officials or the powers that be want us to see. And with this Trump being elected, how people are at everybody's throat, it's even more common to target and profile people that you don't know. Before segregation, you wouldn't be here talking to me because I'm a black person and you're a white person. Then you're a white woman, I'm a black man. That couldn't be. But now we found out that the color of our skin don't mean that we're less human than one another.
I think as a member of the Right to Survive organization, I think that Right to Survive celebrated a great victory when we were able to bring the Pacific Northwest Social Forum here. It was a great success when we had the opportunity, because of you, to sit on the planning committee for the U.S. Social Forum and be able to present there. To have our organization recognized with your great works and you being honored by the state of Oregon as a modern day civil rights leader, we all recognize and value your importance and your role in our organization and community. And we celebrate our successes and victories with you as we are able to be taking on new projects and new challenges, and we have the opportunity to do things that other organizations that are grassroots have not been given the ability to do, because we don't come from mainstream social services.
Well, when you're at the bottom of the totem pole, you looking up and you seeing all this chaos that's happening, and you got that choice. Do I want to go back to mainstream, or do I start making a difference here and go up with that difference and make that difference? People want to always say from top to bottom. You can't build a house from the roof to the basement. You have
True.
to come from the bottom up.
True.
And then with what you just said, we have plenty of awards and books written about us and the work that we've done. And we are recognized by joining different organizations like Healthcare for All Oregon, the Police Accountability. We have politicians seeking out at us on how to solve the houseless situation. We have neighborhoods that come into us, how we can conduct car camping in their neighborhood, how we can conduct small little cities, tent cities in their neighborhood, about the vacant houses, how we can turn those into share housing, all these ideas that we have that they too blind to see because they up there looking up and we seeing everything down here. We have the innovative minds to survive. And that's what's happening. We're on our survival instinct and we're doing the best we can. Now we're trying to survive in the environment, in the open space also. And the thing of it is, people don't want to coexist with people that's not like them, that don't look like them, that don't act like them, where they're going to be very, very, very lonely.
Well, we'd like to thank you for coming out and tuning in to another episode of Right to Survive Television, where we bring the houseless voices and concerns into the studio. However, today we flipped the script and we made our regular TV host, Ibrahim Mubarak, the guest and flipped the script on him. Thank you for your wisdom and insight and telling us about your history and the history of the organization and other organizations that you've been a part of and your activism work.
You asked me what was the upscale of doing this work and how it's taken on this country by storm on peer-led governance. The downscale is when you lose someone in this work, and it's a lot of people that in my time in doing this work that I become close to that we're lost. And the most recent one was one of our main camera person for our TV show.
Chago Robert Santiago.
I want to dedicate this show to him and hope he's resting in peace, really, really at peace, because this world now is in a chaotic state. We're going to miss you, Chago.
You'll be missed and you are loved.